Hi everyone, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. This is Dr. Whitney, and I am so excited today to be finally able to share some really good news about this whole coronavirus issue. So this week, Great Plains Lab, which I have worked with for several years now, in testing environmental toxin panels, heavy metal toxicity panels, they've come out with IgG and IgM antibody testing for coronavirus, which if you've listened to me before, I have talked about this in the sense that this is sort of the path we're headed down, right? Like, whether we like it or not, natural remedies aren't being considered. Nothing is safe enough. Apparently now there's not enough studies to show that, taking vitamin D is safe, even though we know there have been studies in the past that have shown that vitamin D is as effective, if not more than a flu shot. We know these things work, but this is the hand we're being dealt. So, the way it looks is that they're still heading down the vaccine road and or antibody testing. So I was really excited because this way, if you can have your antibody testing done and show that you have already had the infection, you don't need to get the vaccine to safely go out into the community again. Now that's a whole other issue, right? Because it's an RNA-based virus. It's just like the flu. It's going to change every year. So even if we do get a vaccine out, there is no guarantee where that's going to be, down the road year to year, if it's going to be effective or not. So I just wanted to make this a synopsis today of basically the really long post because I was so excited and there was so much information to share that I posted earlier this week about the antibody testing, how it works, why it's better than what we currently have, and why this is what everybody should be doing. So please share this feed, comment, tell me where you are. If you have questions at the end, I'll try to answer any questions that you have. I'm going to try to give all the information first and then get into the question part. If there's any left, because hopefully I'll do a really good job explaining it and you won't have a lot of questions. So first off, why is this better? And I've said it a lot. The testing we currently have is not accurate. It's not. I don't think you can find it any longer because the powers that be have removed it. But a while ago, the CDC's own website said that the current testing being done, RT-PCR testing, the nasal swab testing, was not exclusive to COVID-19. Okay, so what that means is they're not specifically identifying it. It's not exclusive of a severe bacterial infection or any other viral infection. So unless there's some kind of DNA sequencing going on, some kind of secondary step to the nasal swab testing, you're just being confirmed that you have a viral infection in the acute phase, okay? This is why there's issues with false positives and false negatives. If the sample's not complete, if the sample was contaminated, how the sample was collected. There's so much variability in the ways the samples are being collected, the amount of the sample that's being collected, and what's actually being looked at. Okay, so RT-PCR, not accurate. We know that. Only good in the acute phase, and found to give ridiculous amounts of false positives. One study, again, miraculously removed at this point, showed up to 80% false negatives in asymptomatic individuals. And further, Dr. Lee has submitted a letter to the WHO, this was also in my post earlier this week, about false negatives. The other side of the coin, right? And why that's an issue as well, because if you get a false negative and someone really has it and you send them back out to, say, the nursing home where they were at, bad news, right? So Dr. Lee has years of, he's a pathologist, he's got years of research under his belt studying infectious disease, and he specifically offered his services to the WHO and the CDC, and of course he's gotten no response. He's trying to make the RT-PCR more effective by following it up with DNA sequencing to specifically confirm that. It's not happening though, okay? So this test is more accurate. Why? Because we're looking at antibodies in your blood, okay? So with immunoassays, which is what this is, there's no risk for cross-contamination from nucleic acids that might contaminate either the sample or the laboratory when using RT-PCR technology. It's also less invasive. Bonus. I mean, who wants, like, I've seen the videos. It's like a 6-inch swab stuck all the way back in your nose, right? Nasty, painful, gross. So less invasive, less painful, safer, both for the individual getting their sample taken as well as the individual who's collecting the sample, because in this case, it's just a blood draw. And further, what is so awesome about this specific antibody test from Great Plains versus any other antibody testing that's out there, because there are other companies offering this, is that Great Plains has been doing IgE and IgE antibody testing for over 20 years already. They've got this down. They're not new on the game. They've just taken a method that they've already been using for food and toxins and heavy metals, and they're now applying it to this, okay? So they even know that there are 4 other specific coronavirus strains that their test will not be interfered with, okay? So there's no interference from other coronaviruses such as CoV-OC43, CoV-229E, CoV-NL63, and CoV-HKU1. Other antibody tests may not have been evaluated for these interferences. In other words, this test is 100% specific to COVID-19. So not just a viral infection, not just a coronavirus infection, but actually COVID-19, the one we are specifically concerned about right now. So if you can get this antibody testing done, you can show whether you are currently infected, whether you have already been infected, and even how long ago you've been infected, which means we can essentially measure the amount of immunity you have to it based on the amount of antibodies that you have. That's what we're measuring. So IgM and IgG are antibodies in your blood. They're part of your immune system. We used to kind of refer to them as memory cells in our immunology classes. And this is how your body makes a memory of the infection, so it knows when it gets exposed to it again how it responds, and you essentially, don't get it. You prevent it. You prevent the infection from happening, which is the goal of vaccines, but right, it's kind of a flawed system. Natural immunity is always better than synthetic immunity. That's why. So what this means is we're going to get a super specific, accurate, safe, and less invasive test than what we currently have, which is exactly what we need, right? Because we need a view of the whole infection. We need to better understand how many people have been infected, because if you only take the deaths and divide them by the confirmed cases and hospitalizations in the hospital, your mortality rate is huge. But if you divide it over a massive population of people that have already either had it and were asymptomatic or had a very mild case and recovered, that mortality rate plummets, like huge. So when this came out, people were saying, oh, it's 10 times deadlier than the flu. We know now it's not. We know now 2.2 million people didn't die. 200,000 people didn't even die. We know that everything is being put down as a COVID death, no matter what. And we know that the testing is inaccurate. So the numbers from the tests aren't right. This is the test we need to show real numbers, real accurate numbers of the spread rate, the prevalence, however you want to look at it, so we can get an actual real time idea of where we stand to move forward, right? Okay, so there was 2 other things. Okay, yeah, I made a fancy flyer. Look at me, I'm getting handy on the computer. So I've got this, I posted it online. Feel free to share it. It is essentially a very short synopsis of what I've just said. There is also a handout, what they call their test brochure, right from Great Plains, also in the original post. I can put it in the link today in the comments, but they have their own kind of brochure about the testing as well. I highlighted a couple parts on there which I thought were pertinent, a little bit more. So if you were curious about the IgM, IgG thing, IgM antibodies indicate the patient recently contracted the virus, whereas IgG antibodies indicate the patient has had the virus for a longer period of time. Okay, so it's the combination of these 2 things which give us the overall big picture. So IgG starts to be produced as IgM decreases, right? Because the IgM is the more immediate acute stuff, and then as that goes down, the IgG kicks up, and that's like your long-term immunity. So as we said, IgG then may continue to be produced for years after the infection, because this is what's going to confer your ongoing immunity. So the higher someone's IgG antibodies are, the less likely they are to get reinfected. So this is where we're saying that you can get a picture of your immunity, of your immune status to this going forward in the future. Now, we know that such immunity is common for many other viruses, but this little bugger, because it's new, there hasn't been a lot of studies on this part of it yet, right? Can you get reinfected? How bad is a reinfection? We know it's an RNA-based virus, which is like the flu, so it can and will mutate every year, just like the flu, and you will get it over and over again throughout your lifetime, same as the common cold. So we don't know that this immunity is 100%, but it's in theory, right? Because if you have some antibodies, in theory, it would be just like the flu or the common cold. So if high amounts of IgG antibodies are proven to confer immunity going forward in the future, this is important because we could take plasma from those patients who have recovered and have high amounts of antibodies, and we could transfer it to someone with the virus to control the current infection and spread rate. So it's something that's going to continue to be studied, but we won't know unless we get your antibodies. We need to know who has antibodies for how long so we can continue to watch that. So that's in their little handout, which you can see on Great Plains Laboratory.com. I put it in the post. Yep, it's Great Plains Laboratory.com. So if you want, they have tons of information on their site too, a lot more specific. It is a blood draw. It's one tube. So how this works is that you email me. I set up a patient file for you so you can put your contact information and billing in there. Once that's all done, I order the kit from Great Plains Lab for you. It gets shipped directly to your house, and then you make an appointment with any local health clinic or lab to get the blood drawn. The kit contains everything the lab will need, as well as prepaid shipping and supplies for shipping. So the lab draws the blood for you, they'll process it, package it up, send it out, and within 48 hours, you get your results emailed to you. So it's very, very simple. If you are local here in the Madison area, I have a colleague who has a nurse on staff in his naturopathic clinic, and they do blood draws for $25 cash. So very simple. You're in and out in 10 to 15 minutes. Obviously, they are taking all the proper precautions. It's by appointment only. But I have had a couple family members in the last month also do some other lab testing for me. They've had insurance, and the lab has billed their insurance, and they were charged nothing out of pocket. So either the insurance completely covered the lab cost, or there was just, no out of pocket, or they didn't bill them, whatever the issue was. So very simple. No need to make a special trip to see me. And I think that was everything. I had this other handout, which is a lot of they call it a white paper. So it's all of the information behind the lab, which is all the technical stuff. And I wanted to share this chart because I thought this was a really good, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but this was a really good visual of, and I know the writing is backwards, but you get the gist of it. So the blue line is the patient, and the green line is essentially the IgM, and then the red line is the IgG. So as you can see, at the onset, you're asymptomatic for like the first 5 days, and then around day 7, 5 to 10, that's when the onset of symptoms are, and around day 7 is when IgM becomes detectable. So as that goes up, it starts to come down, and then your IgG picks up and takes on after that. So it's a really nice graphic. It shows the window period of when you are asymptomatic and you have the onset. Between days 14 and 21 essentially is when you decline, patients begin to recover, and then convalescence, days 21 through 28, IgM essentially disappears. So you've basically got a 21-day window instead of just a few days with the RT-PCR, in which you can be diagnosed by IgM antibodies. So again, this test will tell you if you're currently infected, if you have been infected, and presumably how long ago you were infected. And by measuring your IgG, we can get an idea of how high your immune status is. So it's a lot of really good, valuable information. Oh, and one more thing to note, for those who have already had RT-PCR testing and are maybe saying, well, I already got tested with the nasal swab and, it was negative, or it's positive and I'm better now. Here's the thing. RT-PCR and the antibody testing will not necessarily need to agree. In fact, a disagreement between the two tests, if any, can often be traced to the after infection time points at which the tests were performed. So again, if you go in for the RT-PCR testing and you tested negative, and presumably we're going to assume that that was accurate, you may have been outside of the acute window. So you may have had it already, even though you tested negative initially, right? So this is really the best way to get the most accurate information. And I have the post that I had. I just want to make sure that I covered everything in here. I know nobody wants to read these big long posts that I write. So I was going to try to summarize everything today. So we talked about why this is a better form of testing, how it's more accurate. We talked about the specific antibodies and what they're measuring. We talked about how you order. So again, if you have questions, just email me. You do not need a new patient appointment. You do not need an office appointment. You do not need anything like that with me to order this test. So simply email me whether you are a patient that is currently seeing me or not, and I will set up this health record for you. It's my electronic health record system. We get that set up. We get the test ordered for you. And like I said, comes right to your house. You set up your blood draw. After that, the results will be emailed to you within 48 hours. Cost. It's $150. That's probably important. Pre-orders are being accepted through tomorrow. So the first kits are due to be shipped out tomorrow and Friday. I've already had over 24 kits ordered in the last 2 days. So if that tells you anything, people want this test, as I think you should. I think that's everything. Yes. Oh, and if you have kids, which I do, and it is not appealing to have your 18-month-old get a vial of blood drawn out of him, they also offer dry blood spot testing for their other antibody tests, and their hope is to have that offered as well soon. We don't know how soon. I talked to my rep earlier this week. For now, it's just the live blood in the vial, the test tube. But the goal is shortly to be able to have this as a dry blood spot test as well, which is awesome because then it's something that you can essentially do yourself. Just like my food intolerance testing, we get you a little cartridge that you prick your finger, you get the dried blood spot, boom, no need for the lab draw appointment at all. Super painless and easy to do on your kids at home, which I'm gonna do as soon as it's available. I've ordered the regular blood draw kits for myself, my husband, my parents. We're all getting it done. So hopefully that comes fairly soon. Everything else is pretty straightforward. I think that's it. So yes, please share this information. This is the most accurate antibody testing out there. As I said, other antibody testing is not specific for COVID-19. This one is. They've already identified 4 other coronavirus strains that they know will not interfere with this test. So you can be sure that if you're going to spend the money, this is the one to spend it on. It's 100% specific to COVID-19, and it gives you all the information you need to go forward to know what your immune status is, and it gives us the information we need to make a better assessment for public health and policies going forward. So I see a lot of people have joined me. Thank you. If you have questions, now is the time to ask them. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up and hopefully get some more orders processed today because I see some people are already requesting them in messages. So thank you for joining me. Please share this. Please comment if you have questions. And I will see you all next Wednesday. We'll see where this goes. Maybe if I have more updates. I doubt the dry blood spot will be available by then. I'm sure it's probably a few weeks to a couple months away. But I'm looking forward to that, especially for little kids. So as soon as it's ready, I'll let you know that as well. Other than that, please... Oh, we got a question. Shannon, do you get the testing done if you think you've had it only? No, absolutely not. You can get it if you don't think you've had it. I mean, this virus is more asymptomatic than symptomatic. So you could have had it and had no symptoms. I just think everybody should get it, to be honest. Like that's kind of the thing they've been talking about since the beginning is test everyone because we don't know who's had it or who hasn't had it. We don't know the specific, there's not like a set population of people we can say like, oh, 18 to 24, they're asymptomatic, so let's test all of them. The healthier you are, just my feeling, probably the more mild and or asymptomatic you will be if you have already had the virus. You might not have even known it. So if you have already had the RT-PCR testing, like I said, done one way or the other, it is still absolutely worthwhile to get this one done. In fact, in the white sheet technology report from Great Plains, they specifically talk about how everyone, this is a two-pronged thing. Like the RT-PCR is good for the acute to some degree, but it really does need to be backed up with antibody testing as well to 100% confirm things one way or the other going forward. So I would get this test whether you think you've had it or not, whether you think you have it now or you think you had it last spring. It's not going to hurt. It's going to give you the information you know so that you know how to move forward with your health and your family's health. So, all right, if that's it, then I will wrap this up so it doesn't get too long so you can share it and people don't have to sit down for half an hour and watch it. Thank you again for joining me, and I will see you all next week. Have a great afternoon.